Within the gleaming metal confines of the unyielding meritocracy's training hall, a space designed with the chaotic flair of a battlefield mid-construction, Kral, the Avak Military Academy's lead combat instructor, exuded an air of strained professionalism. His 12 tentacles twitched in a silent symphony of frustration as he surveyed his students, a diverse collection of galactic species representing the pinnacle of civilized advancement. And then there were the humans, four in number, clustered together like bewildered tourists who'd taken a wrong turn. One prodded a suspicious sticky patch on the floor, another whispered what sounded suspiciously like jokes, and the tallest of the group had somehow balanced a ration pack on his head. Kral, clicking his mandibles in a staccato rhythm of annoyance, addressed the assembled group. His voice, a practice monotone, echoed through the hall. Ladies, gentlemen, and bipeds of all configurations, today commences your advanced galactic warfare training. Only the elite are selected, and even fewer successfully complete this rigorous program. You will be challenged to your utmost limits, physically, mentally, and spiritually. Alexis Platt, a human engineer with a perpetually playful expression, raised her hand. Question, she chirped. Kral's left eye twitched involuntarily. Yes, he managed. Does this training include dental? The other humans erupted in laughter, leaving the rest of the room in bewildered silence. Kral took a deep breath, reminding himself that while homicide might offer a fleeting sense of satisfaction, it wouldn't reflect well on his performance review. Moving on, he growled, fixing Alexis with a pointed glare. I will now present an overview of the conflict scenarios you are expected to master. These simulations are based on the most challenging battles in galactic history. Your survival hinges on your understanding of this material. Inside the unyielding meritocracy's training hall, holographic images flickered to life, showcasing scenes of galactic devastation. Kral, with a voice weighty with dramatic flair, described the siege of Krilnak 5, a battle where the Zand Empire bravely fought against insurmountable odds. He detailed the catastrophic casualties, the dwindling supplies, and the desperate consumption of venomous local flora. A human voice, calm and almost bored, broke the tense silence. Sounds like camping with my Uncle Leroy, remarked Carter Spud Langley, leaning back against the wall with a nonchalant grin. He projected an air of someone who had witnessed far worse than holographic carnage and lived to tell the tale. Kral, taken aback, stammered, I beg your pardon? Spud simply shrugged. You know, scavenging for food, avoiding poisonous plants, figuring out which puddles are safe to drink. Standard Earth stuff. Uncle Leroy even made a game out of it. Called it Don't Die, you morons. The other humans chuckled, while the rest of the recruits remained eerily silent. A recruit resembling a sentient beanbag whispered to his neighbor, did he just compare Krilnak 5 to a game? Alexis Platt, ever cheerful, added, to be fair, Earth's a death world. Survival there is practically an extreme sport. Kral, his composure beginning to crack, slowly turned his multiple eyes towards the humans. Are you telling me, he began, that this level of hardship is normal for your species? Spud scratched his chin thoughtfully. Well, maybe not for everyone. But if you grew up in Michigan or Australia, you'd probably just call it Tuesday. Kral made a strangled sound, somewhere between a gasp and a choked sob. This wasn't how the session was meant to go at all. He'd anticipated awe, fear, maybe even some tears. Laughter was definitely not on the agenda. Let's proceed, he finally managed, the words tasting like ashes. He hoped the next scenario would more effectively convey the perils of galactic warfare. As the holograms shifted, depicting an asteroid field ambush, a nagging suspicion began to dawn on Kral. The humans weren't simply immune to intimidation, they seemed to be finding this whole thing amusing. And that was more unsettling than any death world could ever be. Inside the unyielding meritocracy's training hall, the holographic display shifted, showcasing the ravaged landscape of Threz Khan. Kral, his voice strained, but attempting to maintain a semblance of authority, described the battle, a brutal conflict that resulted in the annihilation of nearly 3/4 of the participating forces. Survivors, he explained, likened the experience to a waking nightmare, a relentless onslaught of devastation. Before he could elaborate further, Alexis Platt, ever inquisitive, raised her hand. Quick question, she interjected, her tone betraying no hint of the horrors just depicted. Kral, with a weary sigh that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 collapsing stars, simply responded, yes, human plat. Alexis pointed to a blurry shape in the corner of the holographic projection. What's that thing? Looks kinda like a coffee maker. Spud and the other humans squinted, seemingly intrigued by this mundane detail amidst the galactic carnage. Yeah, Spud concurred, totally a coffee maker. Weird design, though. Bet it makes terrible espresso. Kral's patience, already stretched thin, finally snapped. That, he hissed, his voice tight with suppressed fury, is a planetary defense turret. It obliterated over 200 combatants in mere seconds. Oh, Alexis responded, nodding with an air of understanding. So, not for coffee then. The ensuing laughter from the human contingent, echoed by a few nervous chuckles from the other recruits, sent Kral's sanity spiraling further into the abyss. He clicked his mandibles, the sound echoing ominously in the sudden silence. Since you seem incapable of comprehending the gravity of these simulations, he announced, his voice thick with frustration, we will move directly to the practical exercise. He gestured towards an area of the training hall where a complex array of obstacles, barriers, and combat drones were to life. The other recruits, their bodies tense with anticipation, prepared for the upcoming challenge. The humans, however, seemed almost bored. Finally, Spud muttered, a hint of excitement finally breaking through his nonchalant facade, something fun. As the exercise began, the alien recruits moved with cautious precision, taking cover as the drones unleashed a barrage of simulated fire. The humans, on the other hand, adopted a different approach entirely. They simply walked. Alexis strolled through the simulated battlefield, seemingly oblivious to the energy blasts whizzing past her. Spud, ever the pragmatist, used a barrier not for cover but as a vantage point to survey the chaos. An iris? Iris Brick Monroe, with a casual flick of her wrist, swatted a drone out of the air with a piece of debris, as if it were a bothersome fly. The other recruits watched in stunned silence. What are they doing? Whispered one, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and bewilderment. Having a great time, apparently, muttered another, his tone resigned. Kral, observing the scene from the control room, felt a cold dread creep into his multiple hearts. The humans weren't just surviving, they were thriving star. They moved through the simulation with an almost reckless abandon, shouting incomprehensible phrases to each other as if they were engaged in some bizarre, high-stakes game. At one point, Alexis emerged from a simulated trench, holding aloft the severed head of a drone with a triumphant grin. Trophy, she declared, much to the amusement of her teammates. Kral, on the verge of a complete mental breakdown, ordered a halt to the exercise. Pause, he bellowed, his voice echoing through the training hall. The drones froze mid-attack, and the recruits hesitated, unsure of what to do. The humans, however, seemed completely unfazed. What's up? Spud inquired casually, leaning against a barrier as if he were taking a break from a leisurely stroll. Kral stormed towards them, his many limbs trembling with suppressed rage. Do you even understand what you just experienced? He demanded, his voice laced with incredulity. That was a maximum difficulty combat scenario. It's designed to push recruits to their absolute limits. Spud tilted his head, considering this. He finally said, well, it was fun, I'll give you that. Kind of reminded me of laser tag back in Detroit. Within the metallic jungle of the training hall, the holographic display shimmered, showcasing a scorched battlefield. Kral, his voice strained, described the Battle of Threz Khan, a devastating conflict that decimated over 70% of the engaged forces. Survivors, he emphasized, likened the experience to a waking nightmare. Before he could fully delve into the horrors, Alexis Platt's ever-present curiosity piped up. Quick question, she interrupted, pointing to a blurry object in the holographic projection. What's that thingy? Looks like a coffee machine. Spud and the other humans leaned in, equally captivated by this seemingly mundane detail amidst the projected devastation. Yeah, Spud agreed, definitely a coffee maker. Strange design, though. Probably makes lousy espresso. Kral's dwindling patience finally fractured. That, he hissed, his voice strained with suppressed rage, is a planetary defense turret. It obliterated 200 combatants in mere *second star. Oh, Alexis responded with a casual nod. So, not for coffee then. The resulting laughter from the human contingent, punctuated by nervous chuckles from a few other recruits, sent Kral's sanity spiraling. He clicked his mandibles, the sound echoing ominously. Since you seem utterly incapable of comprehending the seriousness of these simulations, he declared, his voice thick with frustration, we will move directly to the practical exercise. He gestured towards a section of the training hall where a complex array of obstacles, barriers, and combat drones were to life. While the other recruits tensed, preparing for the challenge, the human seemed almost disinterested. Finally, Spud muttered, a flicker of genuine interest finally appearing, something interesting. As the exercise began, the alien recruits moved with careful precision, seeking cover as the drones unleashed a barrage of simulated fire. The humans, however, embraced a vastly different approach. They simply walked. Alexis strolled through the simulated battlefield, seemingly unfazed by the energy blasts whizzing past. Spud, ever the resourceful one, used a barrier not for protection, but as a convenient observation platform. An Iris? Iris Brick Monroe, with a flick of her wrist, swatted a drone out of the air with a piece of debris, as though it were a bothersome insect. The other recruits observed in stunned silence. What in the cosmos are they doing? One whispered, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and bewilderment. Seem to be enjoying themselves, another muttered, his tone resigned. Kral, his multiple hearts pounding a frantic rhythm against his exoskeleton, watched the humans dismantle the simulation with a mixture of horror and morbid fascination. From the control room, he observed Spud MacGyver Langley jury-rigging alien weaponry with what appeared to be adhesive tape and scavenged wires. Alexis Platt, perched precariously atop a metallic tree, was repurposing a captured turret as an impromptu catapult, launching rocks and other debris at the simulated enemy forces with surprising accuracy. An Iris Brick Monroe? Brick had somehow managed to hijack an enemy mech, now gleefully piloting it against its former allies while shouting encouraging words to its onboard AI, which she had apparently renamed Kevin 2.0. Are they taping drones together? Plep, Kral's assistant, inquired, his voice laced with disbelief. Kral, his voice flat with resignation, simply replied, yes. Yes, they are. Down in the simulated battlefield, Spud cheerfully slapped another strip of tape onto a struggling drone, binding it to its malfunctioning companion. There, he said, patting the conjoined drones with an air of paternal affection, now you've got a friend. He then proceeded to shove the entangled drones into a nearby tree, where they hung precariously, sparking and sputtering. The AI, seemingly unfazed by this bizarre tactic, adapted, deploying reinforcements in a coordinated pincer maneuver. The non-human recruits, faced with this new onslaught, panicked, their carefully constructed defensive formations crumbling under the pressure. The humans, however, simply improvised. Brick, toss me that turret. Alexis yelled, her voice barely audible over the simulated explosions. Without hesitation, Brick ripped a turret from its mount and hurled it across the battlefield. Alexis, with surprising agility, caught the heavy weapon and somehow managed to connect it to her makeshift catapult. Moments later, she launched the repurposed turret into the heart of the enemy formation, where it began firing wildly in all directions. Best idea ever, she declared, giving herself a celebratory high five as the simulated battlefield erupted in even more chaotic explosions. Kral, his mandibles clicking in a rhythm that suggested a severe internal malfunction, watched the human contingent wreak havoc upon his carefully calibrated simulations. Spud MacGyver Langley was currently demonstrating an alarming aptitude for repurposing alien technology, using what appeared to be adhesive tape and scavenged wiring to jury-rig weaponry with unnerving effectiveness. Alexis Platt, having ascended a metallic tree-like structure, had converted a captured turret into a makeshift catapult, launching rocks and debris at the simulated enemy with surprising precision. An Iris Brick Monroe? Brick had, inexplicably, managed to commandeer an enemy mech, now gleefully turning it against its former allies, while offering words of encouragement to the onboard AI she'd apparently nicknamed Kevin 2.0. Are they binding the drones together with adhesive? Plep, Kral's assistant, inquired, his voice laced with a mixture of astonishment and dawning horror. Kral, his voice flat and devoid of emotion, simply responded, "Indeed. They are, in fact, taping the drones together." Down in the simulated combat zone, Spud cheerfully affixed another length of tape to a malfunctioning drone, effectively conjoining it to its equally disabled counterpart. "There you go," he announced, patting the now entangled drones with an almost paternal affection. "Now you have a companion." He then proceeded to shove the conjoined drones into a nearby tree-like structure, where they hung precariously, emitting sparks and a concerning array of sputtering noises. The AI, seemingly unfazed by this unconventional tactic, adapted, deploying reinforcements in a calculated pincer movement. The non-human recruits, confronted with this renewed onslaught, succumbed to panic, their meticulously constructed defensive formations collapsing under the pressure. The humans, however, simply adjusted their approach. "Brick, could you toss me that turret?" Alexis yelled across the simulated battlefield, her voice barely audible above the cacophony of simulated explosions. Without a moment's hesitation, Brick wrenched a turret from its mount and hurled it across the simulated terrain. Alexis, displaying surprising dexterity, caught the cumbersome weapon and, with a degree of ingenuity that defied explanation, managed to integrate it with her makeshift catapult. Moments later, the repurposed turret was launched into the midst of the enemy formation, where it commenced firing indiscriminately in all directions. "Excellent strategy," Alexis proclaimed, giving herself a self-congratulatory high five as the simulated battlefield descended into an even greater maelstrom of explosions. Kral, his mandibles clicking in a rhythm suggestive of imminent system failure, observed the human contingent's systematic dismantling of every simulated scenario with a morbid fascination tinged with dread. He watched, his multiple hearts pounding a frantic tattoo against his exoskeleton, as Spud MacGyver Langley exhibited an unsettling knack for repurposing alien technology with nothing more than adhesive tape and salvaged wiring. Alexis Platt, perched precariously atop a metallic, tree-like structure, had transformed a captured turret into an improvised catapult, launching projectiles at the simulated enemy forces with an almost unnerving accuracy. An Iris Brick Monroe? Brick had, inexplicably, commandeered an enemy mech, gleefully piloting it against its former allies, offering encouraging words to its onboard AI, which she had affectionately christened Kevin 2.0. "Are they actually binding those drones together with adhesive?" Plep, Kral's long-suffering assistant, inquired, his voice edged with a potent blend of disbelief and burgeoning horror. Kral, his voice devoid of inflection, simply replied, "Yes, Plep. They are, indeed, taping the drones together." Down on the simulated battlefield, Spud cheerfully attached another strip of tape to a malfunctioning drone, effectively tethering it to its equally incapacitated counterpart. "There we are," he announced, patting the newly conjoined drones with an air of paternal pride. "Now you have a companion in your misery." He then proceeded to shove the entangled drones into a nearby tree-like structure, where they hung precariously, emitting sparks and a symphony of sputtering noises. The AI, seemingly undeterred by this unorthodox tactic, adapted, deploying reinforcements in a strategically calculated pincer movement. The non-human recruits, facing this renewed onslaught, succumbed to a wave of panic, their meticulously planned defensive formations disintegrating under the pressure. The humans, however, merely adjusted their approach, adapting with an almost unnerving ease. "Brick, be a dear, and toss me that turret," Alexis shouted across the simulated battlefield, her voice barely audible over the cacophony of simulated explosions. Without a moment's hesitation, Brick wrenched a turret from its mount and hurled it across the simulated landscape. Alexis, demonstrating a surprising degree of agility, caught the cumbersome weapon and, with an inexplicable flash of ingenuity, managed to integrate it with her makeshift catapult. Moments later, the repurposed turret was launched into the heart of the enemy formation, where it commenced firing indiscriminately in every direction, unleashing a storm of simulated destruction. "Now that's what I call a tactical advantage," Alexis proclaimed, awarding herself a self-congratulatory high five as the simulated battlefield descended into an even more spectacular maelstrom of explosions. From his vantage point in the control room, Kral observed the escalating mayhem with a growing sense of despair. He could only imagine what fresh hell the humans would unleash in the next exercise. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that whatever he threw at them, they would not only survive but likely find a way to turn it into some sort of bizarre, high-stakes game. And that, he realized with a shudder, was far more terrifying than any Deathworld could ever be.